Elections in Ghana are gradually coming to an end after voters trooped out to elect a new president and 275 members of parliament. President Nana Akufo-Addo is seeking re-election for second term and faces a challenge from former President John Mahama. This is Ghana's 8th election since the return of multi-party democracy in 1992. The polls opened at 7 a.m. and are expected to close at 5 p.m. More than 17 million Ghanaians are eligible to vote in the elections. COVID-19 protocols are expected to be strictly enforced. Those not wearing face masks will not be allowed to vote, according to the Electoral Commission. People have also been advised to return home after casting their ballots. Executive Director, Dinidari Foundation, Ndi Kato, is joining me to discuss updates on the Ghanaian elections. Hello, Ndi Kato.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on the news. Can you keep us up to speed with events in Ghana? How did the elections, I believe polls should have closed by now.
Yeah, elections have been largely peaceful. Kasoa saw, gunshots at a polling unit, 3 victims. Victims have been taken for treatment. It has been reported that there's been a previous event, I think last year, with the same thing with the ruling, the current serving MP, where he fired shots at people at the polling unit. And then that has been repeated again at this time around. And we have 3 victims. And then there is another polling unit, I did not retain the name, where there were some irregularities, but the Electoral Commission actually had the officers there who were pointed out for being part of the ballot paper irregularities, had them taken out of there, and investigations have commenced immediately. Every other place we've seen a largely very normal poll. Ghanaians in diaspora are kind of like putting out statements that we feel like are a sob, saying that they're glad that elections are happening in their hometown, and as Ghanaians in diaspora or in their home countries, and as Ghanaians in diaspora, they don't have to worry about what is happening to their families back home. Every other thing is normal. Every other thing is normal. They've been able to maintain social distancing. Once you get into the premises where the polling booths or the polling units are, you are given a hand sanitizer to sanitize your hand. You cannot access the premises without face masks. Polling units, I think one of the things that is making people think that there is low voter turnout. At the end of the counting, we would see that. But for now, there is actually that conversation around the fact that, the Electoral Commission actually had a lot of spacing and created more polling units so that people would be able to maintain social distancing at the units and there won't be crowds. So
beyond the isolated incidences you mentioned, how would you rate the overall conduct of the elections?
I think I will give them a good 9 over 10. It has been an excellent election.
That's excellent.
I've been following the elections prior to this. There's some things you would see that would really shock you. A good 2.5 weeks ago, election materials had actually gotten to the regions. And when these materials get to the regions, all the parties involved in the elections would actually come and inspect the materials and give a go-ahead, like a thumbs up. Okay, these are the indices with which we are inspecting. This is what we expected, and everything is okay. And we saw them on TV from the opposition, from the ruling party, and even the smaller parties saying, oh, we have inspected everything and we're fine with it's a very new concept to me. I'm sorry.
And it's quite transparent.
It is quite transparent. Every step of the way, opposition won't let the ruling party have peace, or if anything seems out of place. There was an accusation a couple of weeks ago too, in which the Electoral Commission actually said that even when the ballots are being printed, all parties are invited to come and look through the process and see and inspect and give a go-ahead, and all parties had given that go-ahead. So every step of the way has inclusion of political parties, and the political parties do not give their go-ahead, the EC cannot proceed. So that has happened, and even today, we're seeing that level of transparency play out.
Now, Ndi Kato, when are we expecting results to be announced?
Well, I'm looking at tomorrow or next. Of course, counting will start, but we don't expect that the result will. I'm looking at tomorrow.
Okay, and finally, this is Ghana's 8th election since return to multi-party democracy in 1992, and we've always seen, I mean, Ghana sets the shining example in Africa for peaceful transfer of power. How have they been able to do it, and what lessons can other countries on the African continent learn from the Ghanaian example?
Okay, I think that for now, what I'll say, okay, in terms of quality of candidates, there are a lot of things that Ghana has put in place, let's say. We went to the University of Ghana, Legon, and I remember seeing students there. Students were the agents for some political parties, and I asked why that was, and they said, oh, student participation in active politics is actually allowed. So young students in universities can actually be part of political parties. They can kickstart their careers there. What does that do? That makes people very aware, even from a very young age. And some of these things help in keeping, democracy in check when more and more people in the population or more citizens actually understand what's happening. Yes. Another thing, again, you're seeing with the involvement of political parties, the transparency in the process for the Electoral Commission, the process of ballot printing, delivery of electoral materials, also trying to ensure that these things get there on time and everybody is holding everyone accountable. That accountability is very important. We've seen the Electoral Commission on the hot seat the entire time for these elections, and those things matter. One thing I will point to is that Ghanaians also still have to watch and ensure that certain things are not, allowed to sail. So for the case in Kasoa, for example, if justice does not prevail for those who were, for the victims of that shooting,
it might embolden,
it emboldened for these kinds of acts. And it is important for Ghanaians to realize that on the African continent, they have become that symbol of, great elections. This is as perfect as Africa can get it at the moment. And what Ghana needs to do is to show us improvements. And there has been improvements, actually. Of course, with the coming of social media, with more use for social media, more involvement of young people on all of these places. Even when I said on social media that, look, this election is as good as it gets, somebody came and pointed, a young Ghanaian pointed that no, Kasoa has violence. It's good for that kind of accountability to be there. It's good for the awareness to be there. And it's good for citizens at this point, knowing that your country is surrounded by so many countries who have their democracies failing. You actually owe yourself and the rest of the continent this beacon of hope that things can function.
Exactly. We've just seen what happened in recent elections in neighboring Ivory Coast and Guinea. Thank you very much for your time, Ndi Kato. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.